now introduce Leandra Harris and Billie Jo Starr. Leandra, her bio is beautiful. It says that she is a restorative justice practitioner. I reckon we all should be. And she is the program director at Freedom for Youth. She has expertise in peer mentoring. Her young years were spent in the foster care system. And so a lot of Leandra's work continues to be advocating on behalf of foster youth and pursuing her bachelor's in psychology with the aim of ending with a PhD in psychology. And Billie Jo is three things. She is an academic, she is an advocate, and she's an entrepreneur. So she holds her PhD in education from UCSB. She is an advocate in so many ways, certainly as an advocate for youth, for special needs education. And in terms of an entrepreneur, she's built Freedom for Youth. You've been involved in building a culinary business, and you're even building Freedom for Youth's culinary business. So it's a real pleasure to have you both, and I turn it over.
Thank you so much, Casey, and the whole Telea Talks team for having us here. We're super honored. The first time we came, we were just doing the catering, and so it feels super special to be on this side of it. I don't know if I can compete with walking to the North or South Pole, though, because that was the first time we were here. But, you know, someone said to us today, oh, Billie Jo, you and Leandra are out there saving lives, so who cares about walking to the North and South Pole?
Exactly.
So I'm Dr. Billie Jo.
I'm Leandra Harris.
And tonight we are going to play a fun game and give you a fun presentation because we're going to be talking about the game of life. Who's played the game of life before?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and what do we do?
These are my kids.
Right, we start out and we have to right away pick our path, right? Are we gonna have a career? Are we gonna go to college? And then there's all these stops along the way, right? And so tonight we're gonna start out and we're gonna all play this game together. So I'd love you all to take a piece of paper and pass it down. Because when we start out in our game of life, we start with a blank slate. Right, we start with our name, we're born in a certain place, but we have no control over those things, right? So we all start out with a completely blank slate. Okay, everyone got their paper? Okay, now we all have experiences in life, right? So we're gonna take this paper and we're gonna crumple it up. And these represent all of our different experiences that we go through, okay? And now what we're gonna do, because we all start out where we start out, right? You're all sitting where you're sitting. So now you're gonna take a shot. Because we all take shots in life, right? Whoa, watch out. That was actually pretty close.
Oh my gosh, we're getting pelted. Oh, you were so close.
Fantastic job, everybody. Okay, I see you over there. I see you. Still gonna take your shot. Oh, someone's cheating. Someone's starting up here.
Second chance?
Did you take your shot? Yep. That's a perfect representation, right? Because
that's equity, not equality.
Okay, so we don't all have equitable access, right? We all start out where we start out, and some of us take our shots, but we're really close to the basket. And some of us start out in a completely different place. Some of us try to cheat our way through, right? Because we're starting way far back, so we're coming around and we're trying to get closer. Some of us use our community, and we access our community for help. Some of us are like, forget it. I'm walking right over there because I deserve this, and this is about equity. This is not about equality, and I'm going to come over because I deserve this, and I'm going to take my shot because I belong here, right? But here's the reality, is that, Leandra, did you grow up in poverty?
Yes.
Okay, so picture us like taking a step back, right? Did you grow up in a community where there was a lot of violence?
Yes.
Take more steps. Okay, and were there lack of jobs or like substandard schools where you grew up?
Yes.
Okay, did you experience any trauma or discrimination or structural racism when you were growing up?
Yes.
Okay, so Leandra and I are about to be outside around the corner. We're stepping so far back that we're not even going to be in this room anymore. And so, has anyone ever heard of ACEs before? What are ACEs? Lucy?
They're like, I'm not going to get the exact thing, but it's circumstances that happen in childhood that set you back.
Yes.
So like divorce, death.
Right. So ACEs is the acronym, Adverse
sorry.
Childhood Experiences Scale, right? So it's this test, and there are these 10 questions. And the issue with where the ACEs is great, and we're super happy that it's been on the scene because it's brought a lot of awareness, right? But these 10 questions are all focused on, did you grow up in a household that was divorced? Did your parents have a mental illness? Was someone in your home incarcerated? And the reality is that the questions that Leandra and I were asking each other, those are the root causes. And the ACEs test doesn't talk about that. It just says, oh, was there drug abuse in your home? Well, that's just the symptom of the much larger systemic issues that we're facing in our communities. Casey brought it right up. Santa Barbara has the highest rate of children living in poverty in the state of California. And I love that you looked at me because I actually told her that when I first met her. And she was like, you're crazy. And I was like, no, go look it up. But then we only look at, because we live in America and it's all individualistic, we only look at, oh, it's your parents' fault. Oh, you grew up in a home like this. And it's like, well, no, did you grow up in a community where there's low wage jobs and there's no affordable housing? Oh, yeah, you did? Right, so you're starting 15 steps back. And Leandra, what does it mean if we have a high ACEs score? Because what's your score?
More than 10, yeah.
Right, and so there's only 10 questions on this test, but we've developed our own ACEs. And there's like 30 questions, right? Because it's not just about the systemic issues, it's about the environment too. Was there fires here? Was there mudslides here? All of this impacts our communities. Some of our kids, where do they live? Do they live next to the dump that was just plowed through where they live with all those toxins? Do their parents work in fields where there's tons of pesticides going on, right? All that impacts our development and what's going on, but that's not a part of the story. So we're here to tell more of the story. And so what happens when you have adverse childhood experiences is that when you don't address them, it creates toxic stress. What does toxic stress do? Anyone?
You're going to act out in different ways.
Yeah.
Bad for your health.
Bad for your health. What else?
It consumes all your energy and mind and brain power.
Right. And you're in, what are those things called?
Fight or flight.
Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Right? So you have all these trauma responses that are coming simply because you grew up with no food and in a home that maybe you were growing up with 5 families in one room, right? Might look pretty from the outside here in Santa Barbara, but when you open the door, people are like, wow, this is how I feel when I go to East LA. And so when that happens, when you don't address the toxic stress that's going on, it causes diseases. So Leandra and I have an 8 and a 10, which because the ACEs test is only these 10 questions right now, that's what the score is based on. So we both have double the chance of having a heart attack and stroke. we have 3 times the chance of suffering from depression and having a hard time working. We have 4 times the chance of becoming an alcoholic. And this is us. Imagine what our children are experiencing.
And everybody gets to choose a lane, right? In the game of life, we don't always get to choose the rules, and the rules are pretty set in our society. So with what we just learned and what we talked about, that kind of draws you to a destination that you don't really get to choose. So you don't get to choose the car you're in. You don't get to choose the way you go. You just get there and you wake up and realize you're there, right?
And when we're sitting here in this beautiful home, right, and we're warm and great food from our culinary team, right? But the reality is that for our children, this isn't a game, right? We get to go home, we get to be with our families and be safe, and this isn't the reality for the children that we are working with. And so here is the equality versus equity side. So how wonderful that you brought that right up. Did you want to say anything about that?
No.
So what does this signify for all of you? Because we hear a lot about equality. Like, oh, things are equal. What does that really mean?
We don't need things to be the same. We need to differentiate depending on our own differences, our own experience, our lived experiences.
Yes. Because like Leandra and I demonstrated, we wouldn't have even been in the same room with y'all, right? And so we really want to emphasize the difference because it's really easy to get trapped in thinking like, oh, things are equal and we're on the right track. And it's like, no, there has to be equity. There has to be additional supports. There has to be, a leg up, right? Because we're not all starting out from the same place. How many of us have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Yes. Okay. What are the basic needs?
Food, shelter, safety, just physiologically that we're taken care of.
Mm-hmm. And what if those aren't met?
We can't function. We can't achieve the next levels of hierarchy, which is self-actualization or connection with people, for example.
Beautiful.
So we're in survival mode.
There you go. And when we're in survival mode, we're back to those trauma responses, which are
Flight,
And fawn.
freeze and fawn.
fawn. Who knows what fawn is? What's fawn?
It's when we adapt ourselves because our autonomic nervous system is like sensing threat, so we go into pleasing as a way to secure our survival. Women are really, really conditioned highly in this way.
And middle children.
And middle children. That's such a good point. In fact, it's my son's, yes, it's our son's birthday right now, and his birthday is the last birthday always of like the season, and he's like, oh, you have a speaking event tonight, huh? Oh, really? We're gonna have dinner on Friday? Yeah. So middle child, yes, absolutely, they are the pleasers, 100%. And so what happens, right, is we stay stuck in survival mode. And then when it comes to safety and love and belonging and our next needs, if we're constantly in survival mode, Leandra, what happens?
We make mistakes.
We get stuck there, right? And if we don't have our basic needs, food and clothes and a house, then we can't even think about moving up and self-actualizing. What was that?
You can't plan for the future because you're in the moment.
And there is none, right? There is no future because we are so, think about what's happening in our nervous system and in our brain, right? Our nervous system is so hijacked and we're in a state of hypervigilance constantly, right? And so it could be a teacher, it could be a person driving by in a car, it could be someone that looks at you a certain way when you don't stop for them or you're crossing the street, right? And we see them and we're like, Mom, why are they giving me that attitude? Or, right? And then we're responding with our own idea of what's going on, but not realizing that this child is in survival mode and they're just acting out their survival behaviors through what Leandra was saying, right? This is not even a choice. And we think like, oh, well, just make a different choice, right? Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And what it really is like clawing your way out of a hole. There are no boots, even on our feet. We're literally in a hole having to claw our way out. Remember how many steps back Leandra and I had to take to start out in our game. And so here's a great visual for you all to kind of think about. We started out with our blank piece of paper, right? We got our name, we got our place, we all were in different places, we all go to different schools, things happen to us, right? We crumpled up the pieces of paper, we're taking shots. Well, what happens if home and school are not a safe place? Because we need love and belonging, that's a human need. So if we're not getting it from home and school, and we're not feeling that esteem, right? We're not getting that respect and that recognition for doing something positive.
We seek it elsewhere. Not always great ways.
Right? And, we spend a lot of time doing trainings with like law enforcement and teachers, right? And we really help them understand that we're all our own little gangs, right? Freedom Freak is a gang. A love gang, right? But law enforcement is a gang. We all form these groups. For what? For esteem, for respect, for love, for belonging. Protection. And recognition. All of it. And so if we're not receiving that in positive ways, right? Then we're in survival mode, and we're gonna act out those survival behaviors, and then something goes on, right? The fire starts. There's a situation, there's an incident, we're in a trauma response, that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, we're there, right? So the occurrence takes place. And then based on how you look, right, you're treated a very different way. So when my fire response happened as a child, what do you think happened to me?
Got into boys.
That's funny, absolutely. What else? And do you think they were healthy relationships?
No.
But I have my awesome husband, he's the culinary director in the kitchen. We turned that around. It all worked out.
Found a
right?
good one.
But, and then, so, okay, maybe getting a little boy crazy, maybe engaging in some questionably delinquent activities. But when I was approached by the police, what
Stop
did they
on
say?
the wrist.
Not even. A ride home.
Let us take you home.
Yeah. A ride home. And what happened to my friends that didn't look like me?
They got locked up.
They got locked up. I would get called into my truancy meetings for not going to school, which is like the first pathway, right, into delinquency. And still, I called my old assistant principal the other day, and they'd be like, "Oh, Billy Joe, what are you doing here? Right, you don't belong here." And that was super upsetting to me, and hence the reason that I'm doing the work, right? I have the personal experience, the lived experience, and I look like this, and I'm like, "Oh no, we got to do something about this." And so, Leandra, I'd love for you to share about. So this is like kind of the first pathways that we're talking about, right? Truancy, not going to school, hanging out in the park, maybe doing questionably delinquent things that we could have just gotten picked up and gone home, right? But what about the foster care system? What's the pathway for that?
Usually the system. So back to the issues at the root. Your family's unstable. You don't have what you have at home. Nobody's met that need. So now I'm at the mercy of a system that is not set up to help. They step in. Now I'm not only facing intergenerational trauma, society's limitations on me, but I'm compounded by a system that I don't know how to navigate. So it's super hard. Like even right now, giving this speech, I'm like sweating and I'm shaking and in survival mode, still working at getting out of that every day. So the importance of community meeting you there and helping you get out of that, loving, showing up, sharing, building up. Like I feel so good to be surrounded by good people right now, which is making me easier to get through this, you know? But if you were looking at me a certain way because I said I was a former foster youth, or you're looking at us a certain way because of the past that we've had, I'm like thinking where am I gonna go now in survival mode? How do I jump out of that? Then we both miss an opportunity, right?
And I think it's super important for us to share that survival behaviors are an automatic response, and that this is not who the person is. So very often people will say, how could you work with those kids? They're criminals and monsters. And I'm like, what? Like, you have no idea how incredible the youth that we work with are. But it's so hard for people to see past the behavior. They don't understand that that's a survival behavior, right? And if the youth are given an alternative when the fire starts, because of all the roots and the systemic issues that are going on, the fire is gonna start. And when the fire starts, like Leander said, the youth are pushed into dependency court, they're pushed into delinquency court, and then what happens? From one to the next, revolving door. And very often it's the same child. We'll get to some statistics later that are gonna shock you about how many men in our prison in California are former foster youth. So they come into the dependency court through no fault of their own, and then all of a sudden they're in survival mode, they're in survival behavior, something happens, they get arrested, and now they're in delinquency court, and now all of a sudden it's their fault. They're bad. But we're here to say that there's a way out. When you have a collective of caring, incredible adults, this can be the absolute shift in your game of life and take you out of this horrific system and get you on a positive, connected community path and help you go home, wherever that home is for you. We also want to help you understand that this is very much on purpose, these paths. And there's one that's called the school to prison pipeline, and there's one that's called
From foster care to prison.
Yep. And 50% of children in the foster care system are Black or Latino. And 40% of the students that are expelled from U.S. schools each year are Black. And I do a class at UCSB, it's Literatures in Juvenile Justice, and we spend a lot of time discussing the history of the juvenile justice system. Because the history of the system, when you go back to the beginning, the system is an evolution of slavery. How many of us know what the 13th Amendment says? What is the 13th Amendment? The 13th Amendment abolished slavery, except for what? And who? If you're a convict. Y'all gotta see the documentary 13th. Ava, it's on Netflix. The 13th Amendment has a caveat. If you're a convict, we still get to enslave you. So literally,
So that's the chain gang.
that's the chain gang. That's convict leasing. That's what we were doing to Black and brown people still to this day. We built prisons on plantation land. This is not an accident. It is not an accident that we have 5% of the world's population and 25% of the world's incarcerated population. We are still enslaving people to this day, and it's happening right here in our community. In Santa Barbara County, we have the highest racial and ethnic disparities in our juvenile justice system of anywhere in California. You think there's a white kid locked up right now? No. So this is in our schools, it's happening here locally and everywhere, but like we're talking here because we're all from this community. And so we can talk about the arrests, the suspensions. Black and brown students are 3 times more likely to get suspended. There's a 70% of students that are involved in arrests on campus are Black or Latino students. And I'm happy to say that Freedom for Youth does a lot of advocacy efforts to get police officers off of campus because they're actually creating a not safe environment for our students. And they can't learn and thrive. And Black and Latino students are 2 times as likely not to graduate high school. And if you don't graduate high school, 68% of males in California do not have a high school diploma. So there's a direct correlation happening here, and it's very on purpose. Do you want to do the foster care stats?
Sure. I gotta get a little closer.
Yeah, get a little
I don't know them
closer.
by heart.
It's okay, I don't
so
either. I had to look.
50% of the children in the foster care system are Black or Latino. 30% of foster care youth entering the juvenile justice system are placement-related behavioral cases, which means that if a kid has a behavioral problem, and that could be a range of anything, mental illness is not taken into account until investigations are done on minor children. They can be placed outside of their homes with people they do not know. Luckily, we've shut down group homes, but they still get sent to things that are like group homes, foster homes that are just kind of mega foster homes is what I call them. They'll have multiple children in them, but they're not labeled group homes because it's a 2-parent household. 25% of young people living in foster care will be incarcerated within a few years after turning 18. Most of the time when you turn 18 and you are in foster care, you are not given a way out if you're not a scholar or have a couple of people surrounding you to push you through that. They hand you a check and they kick you out. Now, in the state of California, in the last 5 years, there has been programs that have helped. They call it the trash bag kind of program, where these kids used to leave the group homes with trash bags, and now they get bags to leave the home. There's a lot of work that's being done, but it's still a major issue. And 50% of the young people living in foster care will be unemployed within a few years after turning 18. 70% of the inmates in California State Prison are former foster care youth. Another thing about our county specifically is South Santa Barbara, Santa Barbara City likes to push our foster youth to North County. So they'll take them out of where they're born, who they might know, who they might feel familiar with, and they'll send them to Santa Maria and Lompoc with no resources, no ways to stay in contact with people. The suicide rate among foster youth is very high. I don't know the exact percentage, so I'm not going to, throw a number out there, but it's a high number. I personally have a family member who committed suicide as a former foster youth. That was very system impacted. There is not a lot there for us on both sides. And in a system that is created and founded on capital in a negative way, does not see the human, they see dollar signs. So that means that not only are you throwawayable, expendable, but you're profitable. And I don't care how I make my profit, I'm just gonna make it. So if you don't, get yourself to become an athlete, if you don't become a scholar, if you don't follow these rules, if you don't stay in this lane, if you don't figure it out, you can go up north, upstate. You can go be amongst that. That's, yeah.
Thank you.
And you can also see and we have shared this with Casey so that she can send it out and you can all have these slides and this information. Because part of what we do at Freedom for Youth is really change the narrative about children that are incarcerated and about the system in general, and we want you to now do the same. So guess what? There's a way out. And it's through community, and it's with a whole lot of love and providing that hope, right? That future that we were talking about. And so here at Freedom for Youth, we believe in meeting youth where they're at, wherever that is, and we immediately work with them, talk with them, build a relationship with them, because we feel that that's the most important thing. And figuring out, okay, what are their housing needs? What do they need? Clothes? Are they not going to school because they don't have clothes? Are they hungry? What's going on with them? And so we really start with that first basic need, right? Like that Maslow's hierarchy. What does this child need? And who are they? And what are they passionate about? And then we help them identify, okay, what kind of goals do you have? What do you want to be when you grow up? There is no limitations. Don't worry about how it's going to happen. Just what do you want to do? What do you want to be? You're so amazing. And you deserve the world and you can have it. And we jump in that hole with them because we know what it feels like to be in the hole. So we jump in the hole and we're like, okay, you want to get out? Because we kind of know the way, but we got to do it together. And there's got to be that relationship and that mutual trust so that we can climb out, because it's not going to be easy. It's dark in here, but there's light, and we're going to find it together. And so by utilizing these trauma-informed practices, and it's not just about being trauma-informed either, right? We can be informed about trauma, but we have to be trauma-responsive. We have to know how to respond when someone's in survival behaviors, right? And so we're very trauma-responsive. We're about the whole child and just wrapping them in as much love and support as they can. And I know Junior's over there, and we be loving on Junior all the time, even when he doesn't want us to. and we just don't quit, and we don't stop, and we call it relentless outreach, because that's what it takes to get out of the hole sometimes. And so we work with them, and this could be for a little bit that gets them on their path, or it could be years. Where's Daniel at?
I think they left.
Oh, they left. Okay. So, we work with youth when they're 13, 14, and then we stay working with them. We do not have a cookie cutter 12-week program. We continue on, and we have built a family together. So Freedom for Youth was actually started by youth while they were incarcerated 15 years ago in a juvenile detention facility, because we all decided that we wanted something different for our lives. And so this organization is total grassroots, bottom up. The youth decided they wanted to have more support, so we developed a mentorship program. They decided they wanted help with schools, so we developed an education program. Then they were like, we love culinary arts. And so 15 years ago, my husband had restaurants, and we trained some of them in culinary arts. And they went to City College Culinary School, and they went and worked at San Ysidro Ranch and all these fancy places. And then and then my husband was like, oh, I'm done with this catering and restaurant stuff. And then the boys now are 28, 29, and they go, but can't we start a catering company, JP, with Freedom for You? Can't we do it with Freedom for You? Come on, come back, let's do it all together. And so our organization is literally formed, and everything we have done over the last 15 years is because the youth have said that they wanted it. And we're like, oh, you want to start a nonprofit? At this time, I had no degree. I was in my early 20s, and I was like, okay, yeah, we're gonna do something. Yeah, we're gonna change the world. Yes. And we're like, I don't know how to do that. But we figured it out together. And through this process of Freedom for Youth, right, it's not just about uplifting the youth, it's about uplifting each other and ourselves. Like, I've known Leandra since she was a teenager. And now we get to work side by side, right? None of our family went to college. We're getting our PhDs. Right? And then Yaskeen, he's turning 30 this year, and he was a 14-year-old boy when we started, and he's heading off to med school. So by the time this is all over, who knows how many doctors and PhDs we're going to have in the bunch. And so here's just some people that we served last year. We've been super fortunate to expand and get some amazing support. And so last year we were able to serve 763 individual people. And keep in mind, we only count the child as one. We might have helped sister and mom get housing, but that is one child, one family, because we just feel like thousands of people. It's like, we just count that individual as one person, but we very often are helping the whole family unit. So we really believe in mutual aid. We've talked about that. Our programs, wholeness, wrapping the whole child, super important. And leadership careers, health and wellness, and education are our 4 Freedom for Youth programs. But advocacy goes in there because we are a big advocating for the whole child everywhere we go, whether that's in school, that's with a job, that's with family, teachers, and then we go to the state capitol and we advocate for policy changes there. And then we do it in Santa Barbara. And so this is our way of providing direction and empowerment and hope and creating community together. So here's more information about our programs. We have in and out of school programs for our leadership, lots of public speaking, communication skills, that self-actualization piece, right? Because so much of it is believing in ourselves and believing that we can get out of the hole and believing that we deserve to get a good shot, right? And we believe that we can take it. And then there's education and tutoring and, the whole college prep and thinking about where we want to go, because very often our children are told they'll never go to college. And if they do, they have to start at City College. And we're like, well, that's awesome. That's where I was for 10 years, right? Because remember, I come from exactly where our kids come from. And so we're like, no, we're going to get you going with your A through G requirements. We're going to get you connected with the Promise Scholars at UCSB. You can have a full ride to UCSB. Let's just call our girl Holly right now. And so this is all part of our education program. And then our careers, obviously, our amazing culinary arts program. Let's give it up for our big... And it's not just about culinary arts, it's also about skill development and job training. And maybe you don't want to do culinary arts, and so there's the whole other, well, you want to do construction. Great, there's a great program at City College. Let's get you in there, right? Remember, it's whatever the youth's goals are, and then we align them with that path. And then we're super fortunate, we've been able to expand into health and wellness. And so now we have our own mental health counselors who are individuals with lived experience. And how important is it to have a lived experience mental health counselor?
It's super important. I think it makes the biggest change because they know, they understand. And it's from a different space of conviction. There's finally somebody that really gets it. I don't have to explain this extra part of it because they just do. And a lot of our boys and girls really enjoy working with we have a superstar. His name is Isaac, and he has a tremendous story, and he has been able to really connect with the boys and girls that we work with, and we can see the difference. It takes a long time. It's not just a quick thing. It has to be a lot of consistency, working from authenticity, which is really love. sharing your story, your wounds, and showing other people that we all got them, and they're at different levels, they're all relevant, but you can get out of it. So, it's super huge.
And we don't have a lot of lived experience counselors.
Not a lot of us make it out.
Say that a little bit louder.
Not a lot of us make it out. So those of us who do, it's very important that we do come back and we create more community. We extend those arms out more. And I think the biggest thing we were just talking about the other day, we had a young man come who's been out of prison for a month, and he's now at the Malibu fire camp. And he came and spoke to the boys, and he told them, he said, the main reason why I'm here is because I'm just like you, and I want to show you that you can do whatever you want to do. It doesn't matter where you've been, what you've done, you can do whatever you want. Because if I can do it, you can do it. And that's the big part of it.
So what would you choose to do for youth in our community that are screaming for help? Well, this is what Santa Barbara's choosing to do. So we're investing in punishment versus wholeness. 68% of our public safety budget is spent on the DA, on probation, and the sheriff. That's $271 million, which is more than 10 Health and Human Services departments combined. Then we are choosing to see the kids as monsters. And we're demonizing them. We're suspending, we're expelling, we're removing them from school at incredibly high rates. That's a lot of what we spend our time doing, is advocating for children not to be suspended or expelled from school, because advocacy is our jam. And we just closed Los Prados Boys Camp.
Yeah.
Which we advocated so hard to not have happen. Because guess what? Now the children are at the only super max facility left in the state of California for kids. They are in a prison for children. They are locked in cages. And because they're so short staffed, and all the people that are amazing that we've worked with for 15 years are starting to retire, you got these newbies, they don't understand how to work with the youth. And so most of the time they're on lockdown. And so, in fact, Santa Maria Juvenile Hall was just in violation by the Board of State and Community Corrections for their overuse of isolation. So you could choose to do this, or you could choose to do that, right? Which is invest in community-based solutions, see and hear the whole child, right? Like Casey brought up so beautifully in her introduction, to really see our children and each other as one. There is no us and them, there is only us. And make sure that our kids are in school and pack on the resources for youth and families. Why is it when a child gets in trouble that we're revoking resources? Isn't that the time that we should be like, what do you need? Instead, we're like, oh, we're kicking you out of school, we're taking away this, you can't do that, we're gonna put you over here in this facility. That's the moment that we should be like, okay, child screaming for help, what can we do? And the beautiful thing is that we have amazing relationships with the school. We have a memorandum of understanding. And so the schools are totally shifting in beautiful directions, and they will be like, please help us get him to school. We haven't seen him in a week, and we just really he's so close to being done, can we get him here? And instead of just calling the police and having the kids arrested. So the schools, the deans, the leadership, that is shifting in beautiful, positive ways, and so we need the community to rally around that. There's cuts right now going on in our schools. They're removing counselors.
Youth outreach workers that our kids count on. So these are the things where y'all need to pick up the phone and call Roy. Roy was going to be here today.
Yes.
Or other board of supervisors, right? And you need to say, find us the money, because we can't have one counselor to 425 students.
right? And so these are the ways that you can get involved and speak up and support the youth in this community. And we need to use our imagination. We need to burn down the Santa Maria Juvenile Hall. And we need to come up with another solution for our children that is humane. And if it's not going to be boys camp because it's closed, then we need to come up with something else, because no matter how many couches you put in there, or what kind of PlayStations you have, or what AstroTurf you put out in their yard, it's always going to be a prison. And we cannot be doing that to our children that need us the most. And we can really invest in community. And we can get involved. Get involved in organizations that are supporting youth, that are system impacted, that are incarcerated. Because if you're not investing now, you're gonna pay for it later. And we have been here for 15 years. We have numerous amazing youth and stories of what happens when you just show up and you meet youth where they're at, and you see them as your own, and you see them as connected, because everybody deserves that love and that opportunity and that chance. And here in Santa Barbara, there are certain children that get it, and there's others that don't. And we, as Freedom for Youth, have started a revolution, because we believe that every child in this community is deserving of this opportunity and of this chance. We went with Lucy to this super beautiful ranch with the girls, and it was so transformative for them, and they're like, you know what? I'm gonna have a ranch like this one day. And we're like, yes, you are, because you deserve it, right? And because you are capable of it, and because you absolutely can do it, but it's gonna take a lot of support, and it's gonna take a lot of us jumping in the hole together. And so we really just turn it to you and ask you, are you willing to jump in the hole with us and join the Freedom for Youth revolution? Because we're here and we're on it, and this train is moving and going, and we would love as many of our community members to jump on as possible, so that these youth that we love so much can be the next leaders in our community. Thank you so much.
Stay up here for a second. I have a question. Yeah. Leandra, come.
I'm sweating next to the fire.
So, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So, thank you to Leandra and to Billy Joe for sharing so much of their wisdom and expertise with us. And I may think that really this probably should have been 4 hours, because there's like need to be breakout groups and conversations and action plans and things like that. But what I do want to ask both of you is, what's the call to action? What would you ask people to think about as they're heading back to sort of their, normal life, right? Mm-hmm. They're heading home tonight, and what is the takeaway in terms of action?
You want to start?
I think for me, the biggest thing is awareness and impact, in your everyday life, whatever you may be able to do, however you may be able to give, obviously, but just as a human being, being aware of yourself and how you impact other human beings, especially our youth, where you work, who you work with, what could be helpful, what can't. Really be aware of your impact, because it's huge.
It's like that little pebble, right, that we drop into the ocean, and then those ripples become these huge waves. And so we think like, oh, it has to be this grand gesture. No, it's seeing people for who they really are, just in our everyday interactions, in our everyday lives, and opening up your hearts and getting involved wherever you can and wherever it makes sense for you. And then another takeaway would be to really understand our systems here locally, and really understand how purposeful and intentional these things are, and how we're pumped with fear as a way to get us to invest in public safety, right? Which means the DA, probation, and the sheriff. And we're here to say, flip that on its head, because public safety is about investing in children and mental health and affordable housing.
Preventative.
And yeah, it's about prevention, and it's not Band-Aid prevention. We love Band-Aid prevention in Santa Barbara. Let's form a committee about another committee and another committee, and we're gonna pay that consultant to run that committee millions of dollars. When Bill Brown, you released how many people from jail? Over 400. How much does it cost every day to incarcerate someone? Oh, $170 a day. So how much money did you save in 1 month? You could have taken that money and given every single person in Left County Jail $10,000 a month for 6 months, put them in drug and alcohol treatment, mental health treatment, like top-notch treatment. But what did we do? We bought a tank. So it's super important to get involved in what's going on locally, because they don't listen to us the same way they listen to y'all, right? Like, you can pick up the phone, call the Board of Supervisors, they will be right on top of it with you. We fly to Sacramento to go to Greg's Hart's office, and he won't even come out of his office. So you are listened to in a completely different way than we are. And so utilize that privilege and get involved in the things that you care about locally, because you can make such an enormous difference in this community for the kids.
So one of the reasons that we started Telea Talks is because I found myself at many tables where the main topic of conversation, and David, you heard me say this, was real estate and finance. And I like to say there's nothing wrong with those two subjects, but there's actually a lot more to talk about. And so I can't thank you enough, Billy Joe and Leandra, for bringing this conversation to us today into this gathering. And you're here. Please reach out, continue the conversations, both with Billy Joe, Leandra, JP, I think, is still back there. Enjoy.
Went to our son's birthday.
Oh, okay.
We probably skedaddled.
Enjoy some of this delicious food that was prepared by Freedom for Youth, and I appreciate you coming. Yes, Gabriella.
I just want to acknowledge you both ladies. Like, I'm also one that probably had 8 out of 10 scores and left home at 14, was in mental institutions for I think 2 years and 8th grade education, and it was an opioid overdose that really changed everything for me. And so as one who has walked my own journey with that, I just want to acknowledge your articulate nature. Like, you are just a gifted speaker. And
Yes.
like, girl, you speak from the heart with so much resonance that I just, may the path be blessed for you in that gift. And just thank you for your service. And I'm so grateful to know that you exist, because where I grew up in the state of Maine, there was nothing like this. That's why we were shipped around. So I just want to say thank you so much.
Super. Thank you, Gabrielle. Thank you all for being with us tonight. Yeah. Thank you.